Hello, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Films Not Movies podcast with me, Arron, and...
me, Charlotte.
Okay, this week we've got a bit of a, not a musical theme, but a music film theme with, as we're looking at La La Land, which has just come out, and also looking back on Sing Street from last year.
Yeah, that's right. Sing Street is now on Netflix, so we were able to watch that. And yeah, we saw La La Land hot off the press.
Yes. Okay, so let's get straight into it.
So La La Land is written and directed by Damien Chazelle, who also directed Whiplash, which is, we haven't seen that actually. It's the one about the drummer, isn't it? And It's obviously got a musical, very strong musical current running through that one. And it stars Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. Yeah,
so a brief overview of kind of what we're looking at here is this one definitely is a musical. Well, it's certainly dubbed as a musical and is set in LA and is the story of Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. He is a jazz pianist and she is a aspiring actress, and they're both kind of struggling to find success in their respective fields, and they kind of come across each other by chance, and then their story develops from there.
Yeah, so it's a love story, but it's also really about the struggle of people who want to make their passion into their career and how hard that can be, and whole chasing your dreams and that kind of thing. And even the name La La Land is kind of a play on that, really, because it's, you know, they're in LA and that's La La Land, but it's obviously La La Land because you've got to be mad to live there and work there and go chasing your dreams like these two are doing.
Yeah, I've only just realised the play on words with La La and LA in the title, but there you go. It's obviously meant to be, well, it was subtle on me, maybe it's not subtle for anyone else.
So it's a musical.
Yes. I don't know if I like musicals or not.
Same.
Historically, I would have probably normally said, I don't like musicals, but there are a few that I quite like. I mean, I like I think you can class the South Park film as a musical.
Oh, definitely.
And most people would think, oh yeah, well, I like that. So I like funny musicals. I also liked the earlier one they did called Cannibal the Musical, which hardly anyone saw. But I also like their Broadway of The Book of Mormon, which is
that's awesome.
Incredible. Hopefully they'll do a film of that at some point. I imagine they will. So I know I do. It's not the songs that are an issue.
Yeah.
It's
Lion
often
King?
the Lion King. Well, is that a musical? That's where it gets interesting, especially with Disney stuff. And it's interesting you bring up the Lion King because when I was thinking about this film after we watched it, I was thinking, how much would a film like this seem completely normal if it was animated and the songs were in the places where they are in this? If it was just an animated story about exactly the same subject matter. But it feels like it's been a long time since we've seen a film which properly dubs itself as a traditional musical as this one does.
Yeah, in the singing and dancing sense. I think the only other one that I would probably class as a modern musical that I've seen is Dancer in the Dark, featuring Björk, which is a completely different kettle of fish. I mean, there is singing and there is dancing, but it's very different. It's bleak and it's dark and it's the most savagely sad thing I've probably ever seen. So that's completely different to this, which is very much lots of choreographed numbers and
it's lots of razzmatazz. It's bright lights. It's all
bright colours.
It's all very visually arresting. Isn't quite the right word because it looks great, but it is very bold in its colour choices, and it's unforgiving in its kind of we're doing the song and dance thing. So if you're not on board with this, you're going to struggle because straight from the off there.
It starts with a big musical number with probably the most people involved in the dance of the whole film.
And I think they put that in there first to really put their flag in the ground, saying that we're not just going to introduce the musical bits as kind of at the sides, like, oh yeah, this is a musical.
We're not just going to sneak it in.
It's just like, bang, this is a musical with big numbers and stuff. So what did you think of the music in the film?
Well, I think first big number kind of had me a bit worried in that I was really thinking I really don't think I'm going to like this, because I mean, obviously all the singing and dancing was great, but it sort of seemed like a weird music video to me in that everybody was obviously lip syncing, which obviously they are the way that they've shot it. You know, the vast majority is going to be done that like that anyway, but it just didn't seem even remotely convincing that they could have been singing it. Particularly there was one woman who was kind of the lead singer. It was a very breathy, quiet little, like a pop voice, and I thought, well, if this was being done on a stage, lifted from film into an actual theatre, you'd have to be belting that out against all of the Shazam that's going on in the background. And that just seemed a bit weird to me. And then I didn't really like the second number either, which was all the girls that she lives in the house with, all these other skinny supermodel aspiring actress types. And I was kind of really worried at that point that I was going to hate it.
Yeah, I thought the songs didn't start out the strongest either. No. I thought that first one was... I didn't mind it being so over the top. I just didn't think it was a particularly good song.
Yeah, same.
And the second song I thought was...
hard to understand, I thought, the first one. I was struggling to make out the lyrics, which were quite key to what it was all about. You know,
True.
It's basically a traffic jam on their way into Hollywood, and they're all kind of got their dreams that they're all heading there for, and that really does set it up. But I was worried that if I can't even make out what they're saying, is the whole film going to be like this? And it's incredibly colourful, which you might love. But yeah, you talked about colour, the use of colour. I mean, there was a really strong colour palette going on. Lots of yellow and red and green, and a royal blue popped up. I mean, I've never seen more yellow dresses.
Yeah.
They must, yellow dress sales must have shot through the roof when they made this, because there's just like every third person is wearing a bright yellow dress, and it gets a bit like, oh, okay, yeah, we get it. They've got a colour palette going on, but it was quite full force. Yeah,
but I think, just to go back to the music, I think that after that opening part, it really kicked off with the music falling into being a lot higher quality from the second song onwards, in my opinion. But it did something that I wasn't really expecting. I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, because you're always going to hear about the music, I think, on something like this, especially when it's a musical, and that is the key part of it. But there was actually a surprisingly small amount of songs in it, even though there's music almost all the time. Yes, there's quite a bit of dialogue in between, but there's music playing a lot, but they're not singing that many different songs, and there's quite a couple of main themes that are very catchy and strong, repeating an awful lot more than I would expect.
Yeah, and those were the good themes, so, they've obviously hung their hat on them and used them over and over again, and it kind of did need that in a way, because I guess the thing about musicals is that people watch them over and over again, and they get to know and love all the songs. And the first time you watch it, you really haven't got that, because you're hearing everything fresh. So having that recurring feel does, when it comes around, gives you that feeling of familiarity and that kind of mood of what the people are experiencing. So it does really help in that. But it did also feel a bit like, oh, this one again.
Yeah, I think I agree with that because, as you say, if you're listening to a musical, watching a musical over and over again, you'll get to know the songs. But I felt like with the two main themes, which have versions that have lyrics and versions that don't have lyrics, but they're both the same, but it's all the same tune behind it, I did know them really well by the end. So maybe with replay value, if you hit you might be starting to think we've had an awful lot of this now. But as I said, I do think that music was very well written, and I thought the themes were really catchy and strong, and those songs were good. And I know it does have to go out to the music, which is composed by Justin Hurwitz, who also did the soundtrack to Whiplash. Again, we've not seen that, but it doesn't seem like he's done any or many other soundtracks that I could find out about. So he's pretty new to the game, and I thought it was pretty accomplished. The quality of the music, the instrumentation, it seemed very high quality to me, something that with old musicals it's hard to judge because the production quality and production standards were so much lower. I do often think that music sounds a bit rough now. So with something like this so sharp and clear and really high production standards, I think really is a credit to this film.
So what about the two main characters? I personally thought that the acting, particularly in Emma Stone's part, I thought was quite brilliant. I mean, she's playing an aspiring actress, and you see her do a lot of auditions. And, there's a lot of humour in this film as well, which definitely deserves a mention. And some of that humour comes through the kind of the pain of going to repeated auditions and the general disrespect that you have to suffer despite the fact that you're pouring your heart out. I mean, it's one of those first auditions when she's welling up, and I was amazed, how good she was there, just really going for it, and how hard it must be to put yourself out there on a limb and get constantly knocked back. But yeah, I thought her performance was really good, and I did think he was good as well, but it kind of took me a while to warm up and buy into him as this role as a as a real jazz muso.
Yeah, I think
It's not his usual kind of role, is it, Ryan Gosling?
No, I think he was at his strongest when he was being kind of a bit, I don't know, aloof, is that the right word? He's a bit sarky and a bit grumpy and a bit...
Yeah, because he's a sort of stickler for old-fashioned jazz, and he wants to do things his way, and he's not going to compromise, and he won't suffer any crap and all this kind of thing.
But he's quite woe is me. He's kind of like the world is against him, and he's quite happy with the world against him because he's got this constant struggle going on. And I think that side of him, he comes across quite funny and
a bit like a Llewyn Davis light is kind of what I mentioned in that sort of tortured artiste sort of way.
But I do agree with his jazz, supposed to be a jazz aficionado. He did seem a bit like a hipster jazz fan, where he was kind of like, oh yeah, I like jazz, but I don't know, didn't seem thoroughly convincing, as you say.
Yeah, and there's a scene where he's trying to convince her that it's all about jazz, and I was not convinced, so I don't know whether apparently she did become a jazz fan as a result of his passion for jazz.
Well, that's probably treading on spoiler territory a bit, but I don't know how much you could spoil a film like this, but I don't know how much she would say those type of things to be supportive of him rather than... Because she does have this bit where he does kind of say, you love jazz now, and she's just kind of like, yeah, I love jazz now. So I think they do have quite an interesting relationship together, because the majority of the film starts off as a few more characters, but it does pretty much boil down to these two as time goes on. And I didn't mind their relationship or their chemistry on screen too much. But looking back, I do think something didn't quite seem right between those two as a couple.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I could believe a story where people who might not be quite right for each other do get swept up with each other because they're both so passionate about what they do and keep bumping into each other, and kind of this, I can imagine they would believe that fate would bring them together in this type of situation. But what do you think about their chemistry together?
I mean, the story literally does follow their relationship throughout, and at the beginning it was almost a sense of inevitability of that it's going to be a love story about those two, because that's what it's about, so you're just sort of waiting for that to happen, and then it happens, and it's not very twist and turny in that way. It's pretty formulaic. But story-wise, I didn't feel like they conveyed they were kind of two souls meant to be together. And I kind of felt they were better as like a good mates, brother and sistery type relationship, or kind of, I didn't feel like it was a big love. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I definitely bought into their relationship more than that. I'd say that was a bit harsh, that, but everyone comes away with it with their own opinion. So I mean, it's interesting to hear that, because as I said, I didn't think they were thoroughly convincing, but I thought that was kind of set up because they do have a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. I thought that they did have more of a sort of friendly sort of a chemistry, steamy sort of a chemistry. I don't think the story was put together to be really over focused on exactly those two together, because I think what they were doing was so important as well. How she was getting on with the acting, how he was getting on with the jazz side of things, and where they kind of take the wrong turn career-wise or take the right turn career-wise, and then how they bounce off each other around that. I think it made the film stronger for me that they did spend so much time looking at the detail, especially of the music side of things, and really kind of studying little bits of it, even if those scenes that those bits appeared in weren't the strongest. I like how it didn't just boil down to 100% relationship, because I think that would have been a bit of a detriment to the film. Yeah, I thought the music side of things, we're both kind of involved in music quite a lot, and I thought that was quite interesting, how the struggle of trying to follow your dream in music, and how having a full-time job where you earn lots of money making music is not the same as finding complete fulfillment in doing the exact kind of music that you want to do. So that was interesting for me. That was quite resonant. Yeah, I think the compromises that each of them have to make for themselves compared to the advice that they give to the other about how they should live their lives is quite interesting. Yeah. I think it is quite an accurate description of how easy it is to say, and how easy it is to be supportive of someone else's, but then when it gets to the scary stuff you have to do yourself, I think they captured how that feels very well, I thought. And it's interesting to be talking about things like that with a musical when you expect it to be so surface level, all jazz hands and songs, which I'm not making it out to be something it isn't. There is still plenty of that, but I do think they touched on some really interesting things throughout that. But I mean, I think the overall feeling of the film is it's an interesting contrast, actually, because I've heard it being described a lot as a love letter to Hollywood recently. Well, I think what it means by that is that it's trying to fall back on the classic musicals and feeling that gives people. But I think they've also, the writer, Damien Chazelle, has also stumbled across, and whether he's done this on purpose, is the kind of more cynical side of things, and that the surface layer of everything being great and everyone putting on a face does have those bits of contrast where you see them kind of doubting themselves, doubting the whole industry.
I think I would have liked a bit more of that, really. I think I would have liked a little bit more of a dark flip side, which was there, but it was so bright and cheerful. I would have just liked a little bit more contrast in there. I know that's not the kind of film that it was set out to be.
But I mean, that's what you wanted from it. But you can almost imagine another version of this film where it does take not a darker turn, but where it focuses more on, because they are going back to just small, not great apartments, even though in this glitzy, amazing world that they live in, and then it just does contrast back. But yeah, those bits are brief. But in another version of this film, those bits might not have existed at all. So I think it does. It is stronger for them being stronger from them being there, but they're not overbearing to a degree where you think, oh God, I hope something really good happens for these guys because their life is so bad. Then they live a pretty privileged life where they just want to do what they want to do, and how they earn money seems to be not until they get their dream job.
One thing that I thought was interesting was, because obviously you're aware that you're watching a musical, there was definitely a recurring theme of painted backdrops coming up behind them a lot of the time. So there's a scene where Ryan Gosling's having a juice or something outside, and then there's this sort of painted backdrop of Italy, and it's an advert, but it almost looks like a theatre painted backdrop. And there was quite a lot of that where they're walking along, and it kind of does remind you that it's a musical, and you know, you could imagine it being a theatre and with kind of painted scenery behind it. I thought that was quite a nice little touch.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that I hadn't really thought of, really, is that, yeah, they do have the backdrops dropping in all the time, and it does make it almost seem like the evolving theatre production where they're reeling a bit off and wheeling a bit on. And there's a scene towards the end where they're going through the streets of Paris, and it's almost entirely backdrop and kind of props. But
and then that really does come to the forefront.
And I feel like they've really pushed that to make you think you could be in a theatre in the, I don't know, in the 50s or something, but with this very modern Technicolor styling where you definitely know that this is a film made now. And I think, I didn't know this before going in, it might be more well known than this, but that it is set now in complete present day. So there is a lot of cultural, not really cultural references, but just kind of the way the world is now and the type of technology that is in there, but nothing's kind of cheaply shoehorned in. They're kind of living a very modern life normally without it being like a social commentary, really. It's just all there.
It could have been set in any time, but you know, it's clear that it is set now, but those details could easily have been switched for alternative details and it would work just as well.
For me, I like that they've done it now rather than going full nostalgic, say, oh, let's do it in the 50s with bowler hats or whatever. And I think, I wouldn't say it was a brave decision, but I think it made it appeal to me more rather than just them saying, no, this is a proper old styled musical set in olden times as well, because the music's high production value, but it is definitely trying to be old style
musical numbers.
Musical numbers.
Yeah. So interestingly, there were other actors up for these roles, which would have potentially made it quite a different film or have a slightly different feel to it. And up for Emma Stone's position was Emma Watson. When
I heard that, I thought that was quite odd. I mean, they're not too dissimilar, but I genuinely can't imagine what it would have been like with Emma Watson in this film playing that role.
I would have wanted to know whether they wanted her to do it as a British person or to do it with an American accent. I think if she could have done it with a convincing American accent, it would have fitted better. But you do kind of think of her as such an English rose that maybe that would have been the wrong thing to make her do.
Hard to imagine, yeah.
But Ryan Gosling was actually apparently offered the role of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, and he turned it down to take this role in La La Land, whereas Emma Watson turned down this role in La La Land to go and play Belle in Beauty and the Beast. So
we'll have to see which one of these people made the right call on which is the better film in the long run.
But funny that both film producers wanted those two as a duo together in their film.
Yeah, they obviously thought they could see them together. And I guess Emma Stone was the compromise or second person, or maybe a few people of similar caliber were asked to audition. These stories never quite come out.
Yeah. But I think that both actresses, I can see what they're thinking in that they want somebody who they could dress as somebody working as a waitress during the day and looking normal-ish, but could also be transformed to look like an incredible Hollywood actress. I think they both kind of have that. Could be girl next door, could be absolutely incredible A-lister looking. They've got that quality to them. So I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
And up for the role played by Ryan Gosling was the guy who starred in Whiplash, Miles Teller. Now, as we said, we haven't seen Whiplash, so I can't really comment on whether he would have been good, bad or indifferent, really. But it'd be interesting to watch it and then kind of imagine what he would have been like in that role. Yeah,
especially if it had been him alongside Emma Watson, for example, where it would have been a completely different main two cast. And whether he was offered it first, I think I heard that he was offered it first ahead of Ryan Gosling, which is very interesting because I do think Ryan Gosling played this part pretty well. So I do often struggle to imagine other actors in films, but it is interesting to hear about it in advance or around the time that the film comes out rather than it years down the line.
Yeah,
so
and how different it could have been, because it really is about these two lead actors. So that, it's just intriguing to wonder what it could have been like.
Yeah, and I think they both, how much their voices have been doctored, I don't know, but I do think they both have pretty decent singing voices, but not perfect show tune style singing voices, which I think does give the film extra.
Yeah, particularly Emma Stone, actually. She quite often did a sort of half laughing, half not going a bit wrong, but kind of not aiming for perfection at all. And it, it seemed a bit more natural in that way.
I think that is definitely something that you don't necessarily hear so much in films now, where everything seems to be note perfect. Note perfect modern music and films don't really ever have things like that in. And I do think things like that might start to come back a bit, because it gives them a bit more of a human quality, where you do hear either a little crack of the voice or not a flat note, but a note that's just a little bit off, a bit more wobbly. Yeah,
it's good.
So it's score time. Charlotte, what would you give it out of 5?
Now, I found this one. Well, I always find it difficult actually to put a number on unless I absolutely love it. And I didn't absolutely love this film. I liked it, but I don't think it's going to find a special place in my heart. So, but I can appreciate what they tried to do, and obviously, without giving any spoilers away, I really liked what they did with the end. I think had they not gone that way at the end, I would have considered giving it a lower mark. I'm going to give it a 3.
3 stars?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But probably on the lower side of 3 for me.
Lower side of 3? I think I enjoyed it quite a lot more.
Yeah, you big romantic.
Well, I love a bit of cheese. I hate cheese when it gets too stinky cheese, but I think for me this was a good, solid block of Stilton cheese where it was really tasty. And in a good way. I think I was in the right kind.
Stilton is quite stinky cheese.
Yeah, but it's not too stinky. That's the thing. So it was in the right kind of place for me. I liked the music. I thought the music was produced really well, and I'm always looking out for music and listening out for music in films, that if I start to hear things that I like and I start to think this is really well done, I can almost get lost in that side of things, and I can start to overlook other bits of the film. I've been humming the cheesy, because there is only 2 main themes. I found myself just humming them all the time because they're so drilled in my head already. So I thought the acting was good. I thought the singing was good. If you don't like musicals, you're not going to...
There is tap dancing. There should be a warning.
A tap warning. Yeah, I'm never that happy about a bit of tap, but it's subtle enough. And there isn't that much cheesy songery, really, as we mentioned before. So I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Wow.
Yeah, I liked it. And I think it's also a film that's probably worth trying to find the good in, because if you're interested in awards season, which we're starting to come on, this is going to be something that Hollywood are going to absolutely going to lap up.
Yeah.
It's all about Hollywood. It's all bright and shiny in a world where everything's a bit grim and rubbishy at the moment. I think it will distract a lot of people. I think people will love that it's going back to a style of film that we've not seen for ages. It is funny. We've not really mentioned that there is a lot of good jokes in there. I don't think the jokes are too cheesy or too predictable. I think it does some smart things with the writing. The music's pretty good. Well, it's produced really well, but the tunes are pretty good. And I think the casting worked well as well. So, yeah, I'm not afraid to say that I'll give it 4.
Very good.
Okay, so next up we're going to be talking about the one that we watched on Netflix, which is Sing Street, which came out last year being 2016. It's written by and directed by John Carney. Stars
a young guy called Ferdia Walsh. Ferdia Walsh, Pilo, in fact, plays the lead guy called Connor.
Yeah.
And it's set in Ireland, in Dublin, in the 1980s. So for fans of 80s music, you've got a real off to a head start, really, because it's almost kind of got a musical education running through it. So this guy, his family's short on cash, and he gets sent to this much more rough school than the one that he's been going to, and he meets this girl and he wants to impress her, so he decides that he has to be in a band to wow her,
to impress the girl,
win her over, and somehow he pulls it off, basically.
Yeah.
You know, this great band getting together type montages where they go around and recruit all their band members.
Yeah, so this one is another block of cheese, I would describe as. Again, I think in a positive way. So, yeah, as you're saying...
Not stinky cheese.
Not stinky cheese, no. Maybe Stilton was a bit strong for the last one, but again, all right in the right quantities. So he's trying to impress Rafina, who doesn't... I don't think she actually goes to the school, but she lives across the road from the school, so she's always milling about. And, as you say, decides that starting a band is... So he says to her, I'm in a band, do you want to be in the video? And then she says yes. And so then he's got to throw together a ragtag bunch of kids from the wrong side of the track to make a band. And I think it starts off not seeming ultra realistic, this film, but it's quite grounded in realism until they start making music, I think.
Yeah.
And then it's quite clear that the music is far better than you would expect a band of 15-year-olds to be making.
Incredibly good songwriting going on.
Very polished. And to start with that, I did find that a little jarring to start with. But then I realised, well, this wouldn't be much of a film if it was just them being rubbish at what they did. And for me, as it goes along, it becomes more apparent that I think the music is the music as he hears in his head.
And that's what makes this more interesting, really. It's got something a bit more different going on, which is that blurred line between what is reality and what is his vision of what he sounds like and what he wants his music videos to look like, because they film lots of little videos as they go along starring this girl.
Yeah.
And that just kind of gives it a really interesting dimension. And it, everybody has that, how they see themselves, how they hear things, and it just kind of gave it a nice little twist.
Yeah, I think Connor is quite relatable because he is not a dweeby kind of boy, but he's pretty normal. He's a bit quiet, but he's kind of got it's like, oh, I'm gonna win over the girl by becoming this rock star persona. And I think it is something that kids dream of. Is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be so cool. I'm gonna be up on stage. I'm gonna be singing, and everyone's gonna be loving it. And I think they really tap into that part of the psyche. Even if you're older than that age now, you can think back to, I used to think like that, and think that would work, and your dream would be that you would be amazing in front of the school hall, blasting out your own quality tunes.
I mean, we've all kind of had phases where we kind of have idols and you start dressing a certain way, but the hilarious an amazing thing about this film is Connor, the young lad in it, has got an older brother who sort of gives him this musical education, and then it's almost week to week he's given a different album by his brother, and then next thing you know he's got a completely different look going into school, completely embodying the next band, whether it's The Cure or whoever, and the next song that they write is an absolute pastiche of that band, and it's so perfectly done. The songs could be written by those bands. It's so well done, and then the music video is completely like a music video from that band would be, and it's just absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I think they've taken a lot of care into making they're not parody songs because they're not funny songs, but they sound alike, and the lyrical content and just the structure of them and the instrumentation of them is so close to the original band, but they're done with they've still managed to make it sound
like a really good song.
Like, well, naive, like it would be a cover that 15-year-olds done. It's not done in a way where they like, oh yeah, we'll take that bit from that bit. They think they're being all super original. How do they describe themselves? Futurist sound or something, when really they're just copying everything that they hear. But to them, they're the most original thing in the world, with their rolled up sleeves thinking they're Duran Duran one week and then big bouffant Bob Smith hair the next week. Yeah. So I think the music a lot of care has gone into writing these little songs, which don't take up huge parts of the film. Each song probably only appears for about a minute and a half each.
Yeah.
But they're such great little bridges in the story. Kind of, they've got her involved with another video, so let's see this hilarious kind of 15-year-old directed video with things that they think are really cool. And
I mean, it's a simple film, really. It's a straightforward film, but it's absolutely feel good. If you're feeling down in the dumps, and if you like 80s music in particular, just watch this and it'll cheer you right up.
Yeah, so this one isn't a musical.
Is it?
Or is it? Well, the lines between these two films, there's a reason why we watched them both this week, but there's a reason why we kind of included these two in the same episode, is because beforehand I was just like, well, are these both musicals? Because there's probably more original songs in Sing Street than there is in La La Land, and it's just as integral to the plot, and they do pretty much break out into song in a few moments as well. It's always structured where they would have been playing music anyway.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it does just roll into the narrative of the film. So it is an interesting line that is being blurred there.
There's no tap dancing in Sing Street.
There's no tap dancing, no. And the dancing is in very structured, in very normal places rather than La La Land, where they do just burst out into ludicrous, a bit cringy dancing,
I think it's fair to say that Sing Street is not a musical in the strictest sense, but the songs do advance the story in a way, even though they're not sort of singing the story. They're not singing the songs he's writing about her as well and how he's feeling, so it kind of does in a way.
And if this was in the theatre, it would be described as a musical, because
yeah, probably
it would. So it's, if we're missing something really obvious about the line between here, I know it's more about the song and dancing. The overall feel makes La La Land a musical and this not, but for me they're films that I enjoyed, both with music in it, so why can't they both be called musicals is what I would say. But
so Sing Street is very much, obviously, the music is just at its heart, and his relationship with the girl, Rafina, is at its heart. But then there's also some of the really great relationships, really, that make the film what it is. So his relationship with his older brother, who gives him his musical education, who's got all the massive wall of vinyls that he lends him. Yeah. That's really important to the film. And also the relationships of the guys, the band members themselves, particularly with this sort of main Connor, and I can't remember what the other guy's called, but who does the songwriting with him, and he goes around to his house and it's like, oh, do you want to write a song? And they just, those moments where they sit and they write, and there's some nice little songwriting moments where they're literally writing it on the screen, or obviously songwriting doesn't fall out of your guitar like it does on Sing Street, but I really liked those bits where they're just sort of progressing things together. It's very sweet. Yeah, and I think it really helps that they are definitely kids playing the part of kids. They're not really 22, 25-year-olds pretending to be 16. I think roughly they were about that age when they filmed it, and I think that really helps because they definitely look like they're trying to be cool at 16, writing music with a guitar and really getting into it, writing music in the park and thinking they're being all like muso and really unembarrassed.
Really unembarrassed while they look pretty embarrassing and cringy. But they write these great songs, and I think it can be easy to criticise this song, saying, well, why is the song so good? I think it just helps the film move along at a really good pace and fit into a neat hour and a half or hour and 40, whatever it is, without it really drawing out the music writing process or really showing, they're slowly getting better over time. No, it just drops them in. They do one that sounds like Duran Duran, and it sounds like it. They do one that sounds like The Cure. They do that, and the songs are all really catchy and great. But that relationship with the other character, I can't remember his character. I think he's played by someone called Mark McCullen. I can't remember why I can remember that. They have a really nice little side relationship. Quite stupid line to use, but quite a little bromance between those two as an offset to the main romance of the main piece. And it is really a story of the main two characters' romance, but it's almost easy to just get lost in the songs, as you were saying before, rather than focusing too much on that. It's very feel good. There's not really many feel bad moments, if you would describe it as that. A few little things that things that you root for in kind of,
and his family's in turmoil and things like that.
But nothing ever really overwhelms the badness stakes where you get to down in the dumps about his situation. It's always kind of a few minutes away from...
moves along, a
few minutes away from a good moment. And I think your description before, saying that this was a pure feel-good film, I think this is one of the films most in the last few years where I probably started watching it not in a particularly good mood, and it was fully uplifting, even if it is reasonably one-dimensional, the film. If that one dimension is really good, then it's certainly something I can get behind.
Yeah. And I loved the sort of 80s setting of it as well, and particularly, you know, it's 80s Ireland. It's not sort of cutting edge, over the top 80s fashion. It's sort of the 80s as it really was, really, the fashions, you know, 80s fashionable, but not really out there, not cool, just kind of the 80s that you remember, really, and some of the house settings. Like, I was watching it going, we had those kitchen units and things like that. So I thought they did a good job of kind of recreating that without it being so in your face that it looked like they were trying too hard to make it 80s. It just really seemed natural. And I thought they did a really good job of that.
Yeah, that's not really something I took into consideration. But yeah, that it did really feel very much like it could have been your living room as it was, or your parents' living room as it was in that time, and the haircuts and them trying to be fashionable but on a shoestring budget and kind of making things work and stuff. So yeah, I think that is another little. There was lots of little details, whether they're purposely making things look a bit rubbish or there's just a couple of moments where the couple are being swept off their feet or something, and there's just hilarious little things in the background that properly make you think, no matter how amazing the world seems to them, the cold light of day looking back, you just see that there's just not grim, but kind of hilarious, stupid real world things going on in the background as well. I don't want to say the one that really made me laugh because
it's not a Hollywood movie. This is a Dublin movie, and it's great.
Yeah,
it's a real world in the
kind of real world.
Kind of. So that was Sing Street.
Yes, another thoroughly enjoyable one. I think we've watched 2 good films this week.
Yep.
So I've been agonising over what to give this. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I just felt so uplifted by it. I thought this has been great fun from start to finish. I was listening to the soundtrack for a few days afterwards. The little songs are great. I wish they were full length though, because most of them are about a minute and a half long. I'd love to have full length versions of some of them because they are properly good and catchy. Probably more catchy than the music from La La Land. But despite that, I think I am only going to give it 3 stars. And I'm not really sure why, but something just feels, as I was saying before, it is a bit one-dimensional, but it's a really enjoyable dimension. But I do feel like as time has passed since watching it a bit, there wasn't too much depth to it. Which is the only reason I've gone through, but a really strong and super enjoyable 3. And I think a lot of people will enjoy Sing Street more than La La Land and think, how can I possibly give one more than the other? But just, something about it is making me give it 3, but a really good 3.
Yeah, I can understand completely where you're thinking of, where you're coming from there, because it's a simple film and it's maybe a bit lazy to compare it to The Commitments in that sort of getting the band together and all the kind of lovable rogues gallery, but a lot younger. So I'm going to give it a 4. And then we kind of balance out.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it kind of did just leave you with such feel-good energy at the end. And there's not many films that do that. And there wasn't really anything that let it down other than that it wasn't a vastly ambitious project. You know, it had a simple premise and it did that really well. And yeah, maybe time will tell that I won't, I'll look back on it and not think it's as great. But at this moment, I feel like I would quite happily sit down and watch it all over again, and probably love it again. So
yeah, and which is also something that I would do. But yeah, so 3 just feels right for some reason. But as I said, 3 is
we're being a bit cheeky, aren't we? Really balancing each other out when we kind of
well, it's an awkward. But I don't think you would have ever given La La Land 4. No. So and I don't think it's. They are quite close to each other, but I think it is. We're going to try and not stray into half-star territory. So I think
I loved the characters more in Sing Street.
Yes, and I think
by quite a long way.
I think I did as well, because it's so much more relatable and you can see yourself in them a lot more than you can see yourself in the characters in La La Land. But I do also like a bit of escaping into someone else's world sometimes, rather than not that being a schoolboy in Dublin in a band has ever been my world, but as I was saying before, it did almost feel like you could just, in moments of your childhood, could just drop into the things that are happening to them, whereas it is quite different in La La Land. So that's the overall thinking behind my ratings. So yeah, there we go. That's been
a musical week.
A music-filled
week.
Music-filled film week. Yeah, that's been another episode 6. Done and dusted. I hope you enjoyed. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at FNMPod.
That's right.
Yes, I think that's still the only channel for finding us at the moment. But please subscribe and rate. Subscribe? Is that right? Subscribe to the podcast?
Yep, subscribe.
And rate it if you can, if you liked it, because it'd just be great to get the word out a bit more about the podcast.
Yep.
But
we've also guested on another podcast this week if you want to listen out.
if you're a fan of the video game Hearthstone, which is a card game, we've guested on...
Online collectible card game type thing.
Yes, we've guested on the Hearthstone podcast, which I think on Twitter is Hearthstone Pod, if you want to follow it, and then that's got all the link information, but it's also available on iTunes and stuff, and that's featuring Jim Mack, if you know him, and if you don't, you'll get to know him on the podcast.
Yep, so if you want even more of us, you can find us there this week.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Dum, 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 dum.
Such a cheese.